Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This is Law 2 from the Timeless Principles of Power, and it's a game changer. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll see relationships in a whole new light. Let's start with a hard truth. Friends can be dangerous. Why? Because friendship is built on emotions, not logic. Friends are easily aroused to envy, spoiled by familiarity, and can become tyrannical when given too much power. History is filled with stories of friends who betrayed those who trusted them the most. In the mid-9th century, a young and inexperienced ruler, Michael III, found himself thrust onto the throne of the Byzantine Empire. His mother, Empress Theodora, had been cast aside, and his uncle, Bardas, had orchestrated the coup that put Michael in power. Now, Michael needed someone he could trust. That someone was Basilius, a simple stable hand of Macedonian descent. Years earlier, Michael had visited the royal stables when disaster struck. A wild horse broke loose, charging straight at him, but Basilius, fearless and strong, saved the young prince's life. From that moment, the two were inseparable. Michael showered Basilius with gifts and titles, elevating him from a mere groom to head of the royal stables. Soon, he was trained in the ways of the court, refined and educated. And when Michael became emperor, there was no question Basilius would be his closest advisor. But power changes men. Basilius, once humble, now craved wealth. Michael doubled, then tripled his salary, even marrying him off to his own mistress to secure his loyalty. But it was never enough. As the emperor's trust in him deepened, so did Basilius's influence. He warned Michael of his uncle Bardas, the very man who had helped him ascend the throne. "He is ambitious," Basilius whispered, "a threat to your reign." Michael listened. During a grand horse race, Basilius struck. With a swift blade, Bardas fell, and with him any remaining challenge to Basilius's rise. With Bardas gone, Basilius assumed control of the empire's military. His power grew, his wealth expanded, and soon Michael realized a terrible truth. Michael, drowning in debt, asked his friend for financial help, but Basilius refused. With a mere glance, he revealed what had become clear. He was now more powerful than the emperor himself. One fateful night, after a feast, Michael awoke to find himself surrounded. His once loyal friend now watched as soldiers drove their blades into his body. The stable boy had become emperor, and the price of trust had been paid in blood. Michael's fatal mistake? He trusted a friend too much and ignored the warnings of his enemies. As Voltaire famously said, "Lord, protect me from my friends. I can take care of my enemies." Now let's consider Emperor Sung of China. For centuries after the fall of the Han Dynasty in AD 222, Chinese rulers met the same fate: betrayal, assassination, and a never-ending cycle of bloody coups. Generals would overthrow weak emperors, only to be killed themselves by their own men. The position of emperor was the most dangerous in the land. But strategy is everything. Just as in a game of chess, survival depends not on brute force, but on foresight and control. In AD 959, General Chao, soon to be Emperor Sung, sought to break the cycle. He knew the fate that awaited him unless he changed the game entirely. Shortly after taking the throne, Sung hosted a grand banquet for his top generals. They drank heavily, but as the guards left and the room emptied, fear gripped the commanders. Would Sung eliminate them all in one decisive move? Instead, he spoke. "We all live in fear. Any one of you could be forced onto the throne, and if that happened, how could you refuse?" The generals swore their loyalty, but Sung had a different plan. He offered them wealth, luxury, and peaceful retirement in exchange for stepping down from their posts. No more power struggles, just a life of pleasure. The next day, every general resigned. With a single stroke, Sung defanged his greatest threat. But he wasn't finished. When King Lu of the Southern Han surrendered, Sung greeted him not with execution, but with a toast. As Lu hesitated, fearing poison, Sung laughed and drank first. The cup was clean. From that moment, Liu became one of his most devoted allies. Again and again, Sung turned enemies into loyal followers. When Qian Shu, another defeated king, was caught conspiring against him, his ministers urged Sung to imprison him. Instead, Sung honored him and handed him a mysterious package to open on his journey home. Inside were documents proving Shu's betrayal. Yet Sung had spared him. Overwhelmed by mercy, Shu swore loyalty, never daring to turn against him again. A Chinese proverb warns that friends are like the jaws and teeth of a beast. Get too close, and they will devour you. Sung understood this well. Rather than surrounding himself with ambitious allies who would betray him, he transformed his enemies into the most grateful and loyal subjects. A man spared from death will do anything for the one who granted him life. In the end, power is not always about crushing your opponents. It's about knowing when to let them live. Just like in chess, the best players see beyond the next move. In a speech Abraham Lincoln delivered during Civil War, he referred to the Southerners as fellow human beings who were in error. An elderly lady scolded him for not calling them irreconcilable enemies who must be destroyed. "Why, madam," Lincoln replied, "do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" In 1707, Napoleon's trusted foreign minister, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, saw disaster on the horizon. He believed the emperor's ambitions would bring ruin to France. He turned to his most dangerous enemy, Joseph Fouché, head of the secret police, a man who had once tried to have him assassinated. Their past hatred gave them an advantage. With their combined influence, they slowly turned others against Napoleon. Though they failed to overthrow him at the time, their unlikely partnership planted the seeds of opposition. Even after Napoleon fell, Talleyrand and Fouché continued to work together, bound not by friendship, but by a shared purpose. Talleyrand and Fouché's story teaches us that enemies, when used correctly, can be far more reliable than friends. They don't expect favors, and they'll work tirelessly to prove their worth. As Talleyrand once said, "The wise man profits more from his enemies than a fool from his friends." So, what's the takeaway? Friends can betray you, but enemies can become your greatest allies. The key is to balance trust with strategy. Use friends for friendship, but when it comes to power, rely on skill, competence, and the untapped potential of your enemies.